I believed my fiancé. I believed every word he said, but I found out it was all a lie. See, this story is so bizarre, so strange, it had me questioning my own self when I was reading it. It's about a woman who finds out that her fiancé is not who he says he is. In fact, he's an actor. Every single part of his life was a lie, from his childhood to the sports he played to the trophies in his room. One of the trophies said 1999 champion of the baseball league. However, when you flip it upside down, it says manufactured in 2014. He was living a lie. So why would he set props and do all this weird stuff to just live a lie? It's because he was trying to impress OP. He went so far as hiring actors to show up in his life and reinforce his stories that he told her. And I'm going to tell you guys right now, this is one of the weirdest stories I've ever read. Hey guys. I don't know where to start. I've actually rewritten this one paragraph 6 times. I think my fiancé built his entire identity from scratch. I think he hired actors. I think he rented a town. I sound insane, I know. Let me start from the beginning. I've been with Beck for 4 years. We got engaged 8 months ago, and he's always been the kind of man people describe as grounded. Soft-spoken, patient, thoughtful in ways that felt rare. He told stories about his childhood with this specifically. It just made me ache with envy. See, I grew up in a fractured home. Parents who barely spoke to each other, moves every 2 years. Beck's stories were the opposite. Summer evenings catching fireflies in Grafton Ridge, a town where everybody knows everyone's grandparents. Friday night football games under the light. A creek behind his house where he learned to fish with his father. The details were so vivid, so warm, so complete. I loved him for those roots, for that history, for the weight of the past that seemed to anchor him to the earth in ways I've never experienced. Our apartment is full of his mementos, framed photos of him at 10 years of age with a gap-toothed grin, ticket stubs from high school football games carefully preserved in a shadow box, an old baseball bat with worn grip tape that he kept mounted on the wall. He would touch these things sometimes absently, like we were, rosary beads. I thought it was charming. It's evidence of a stable upbringing, yeah? The kind of childhood that produces well-adjusted adults. But sometimes, and I hate that I'm only seeing this now, sometimes when I picked up these objects, I noticed things. The varnish on the baseball bat isn't really worn evenly. It looked applied in random patches. The edges of the childhood drawing he had framed looked too crisp, like the paper was too white for something allegedly stored in an attic for decades. I dismissed these observations immediately, told myself I was being neurotic, that I analyzed things too much. Beck talked about Grafton Ridge often, but his stories always arrived at tidy emotional conclusions. Every anecdote had a clear moral, a clean arc. And when I asked follow-up questions, what were his neighbors' names? What kind of fish did he catch? Or what was his elementary school called? He would pause, just for a mere second before delivering a perfectly formed memory. It felt like watching something buffer. My friend Livia, she noticed it at dinner parties once. After Beck left the room, she leaned over and whispered, "He talks like a character in a movie describing the origin story." Does that weird you out? I laughed it off. Beck laughed too, and I told him later, but his smile didn't reach his eyes. Here's something I'm only remembering now. Early in our relationship, I would tell Beck I admired people with strong roots, people who came from somewhere. He would go very still, too still, and then nodded when his intensity that felt like he was memorizing something critical. 3 weeks ago, Beck proposed when we visited Grafton Ridge. His hometown, the place I've heard about for 4 years but never seen. He insisted on planning every detail himself. Where we would stay, who we would see, what we would do. He said it needed to be authentic, that he wanted to, quote, do it right. I thought I was being invited to his origin story, but I was wrong. So we arrived on a Thursday afternoon, and the moment I stepped out of the vehicle, something felt wrong. The town looked like a movie set, not like metaphorically, I mean literally. Every storefront had perfect paint, zero weathering, signage that looked freshly installed, and the sidewalks were immaculate. No cracks, no gum stains, no weeds growing through the concrete. Even the vintage elements looked aggressively vintage, like somebody had designed small-town America based on a Pinterest board. Beck was watching me. I could feel his eyes tracking my reaction. "It's so preserved," I said, trying to sound impressed rather than unsettled.
"Yeah, they're really caring about history here."
So we went to dinner first. A waitress with theatrical makeup and a name tag that said Dolly. It greeted Beck like he was returning a war hero. "Our hometown boy," she announced to the entire restaurant, and then I'll never forget this, the other diners started clapping. Not scattered, organic applause, it was synchronized. It was clapping like extras hitting their cue. Beck's smile looked painted on. Dolly brought us pie we didn't order, leaned in close and said, "It's just like old times, isn't it, Beck?" Her perfume was overwhelming. Her eyes were too intense, I'd say, and her cadence was scripted.
"Just like old times," Beck repeated,
but he sounded like he was confirming a line, reading. And then Adrian arrives, Beck's, quote, childhood best friend, right? Adrian had the posture of someone who had taken acting classes, perfect symmetry in his movements, a handshake that lasted exactly 3 seconds too long, like he's been coached on making an impression. He sat down and immediately started recounting childhood memories. The same stories Beck had already told me, same cadence, same jokes, some emotional beats. It felt like watching two people perform a rehearsed dialogue.
"Remember when we snuck into the old Miller barn? Oh, and you fell through the loft floor?"
They both laughed. The laugh was canned. I tried to ask Adrian something spontaneous, what his parents did for work, and he froze mid-smile. His eyes darted back to Beck as if seeking permission to answer. The tour of Beck's childhood home?
Oh man, that was worse.
The interior was pristine. No dust, no wear patterns on the hardwood, no scuffs on the walls. It looked like a real estate showing staged 2 hours earlier. Every item was placed with this kind of intentional you see in design magazines. Beck walked through it like he was touching stuff, a door frame, a banister, but his touches felt performative, like he was indicating blocking for an invisible camera. In the living room, I noticed a woman standing behind the curtains in the adjoining room watching me. Not watching Beck, watching me. When I made eye contact, she didn't look away. Her expression was not judgmental, it was frightening. "Who is that?" I asked Beck. He glanced over and something flashed across his face, panic maybe.
"Oh, that's just Miss Kolowski, neighborhood busybody, ignore her."
But Miss Kolowski's expression did not look nosy, it looked warming. Beck showed me his childhood bedroom, trophies lined to the shelf, participation awards, sportsmanship medals, a debate team plaque. I picked one up. The engraving font was modern, sans serif, the kind you see on custom Amazon orders. The 1999 Sportsmanship Award had a manufactured stamp on the bottom, 2014. I put it down quickly, my pulse suddenly was loud in my ears. That night, there was a barbecue reunion with old friends. Everyone told stories that ended with uplifting morals. Nobody really shared messy memories, contradictions, or unflattering moments. It was like listening to a writer's room pitch perfect backstory. At one point, Adrian raised his glass and started a toast.
"To Beck, no matter what name you go by now."
The entire gathering froze. Beck's eyes looked onto Adrian with an expression I've never seen on his face. It was desperate, pleading, and terrified.
Adrian laughed awkwardly, recovering. Childhood nicknames. Remember when we called you?"
But no one filled in the blank. No one laughed. The silence was deafening. Beck insisted we leave the next morning, a day earlier than planned, and he said something about weather. But the forecast was clear. I caught him whispering frantically to Adrian by the cars, his body language jagged with fear, and on the drive home, Beck kept glancing at me whenever I went quiet. His knuckles were white on the steering wheel.
"You believe everything, right? Nothing seemed off."
The desperation in his voice made my chest tighten. I lied. I said, everything was perfect. His shoulders were relaxed, but only slightly. I spent the entire 5-hour drive staring out the window, with my mind just cataloging every wrong detail: the synchronized clapping, the manufactured stamp on the trophy, Adrian's slip about the names, the woman's terrified face, the 2 clean surfaces, the identical shadows and childhood photos I've seen. When we got home, Beck hugged me tightly in the doorway and whispered, "Don't leave me, you're perfect." It did not sound romantic, it was creepy. It sounded like begging an audience member not to walk out mid-performance. So I guess the question of this entire post is, am I the a-hole for pretending everything was just fine? For lying about believing him? I don't know what to do with that, with what I've discovered. I don't even know if discovered is the right word, because I don't fully understand what this is yet. But I'm terrified. I'm starting to believe the man I've looked for 4 years might not actually exist. I don't know, but I sure as hell will update you. Update number 1. I started digging, and I think I'm losing my mind. I can't believe I'm writing this. I can't believe any of this is real. After we got back, I couldn't let it go. I told myself I was being paranoid, that I've seen too many psychological thrillers, that love makes you neurotic, but the details kept surfacing like splinters working their way out of the skin. I started with something small. I called the dinner. The number was disconnected. I checked Google Maps for the diner. Grafton Ridge was listed as unverified business with only 5 photos, all uploaded within the same hour 3 weeks ago, right after Beck booked our trip. My hands were shaking when I called Liv. She came over immediately and we searched public records together, hunched over my laptop like we were planning a heist. No record of Beck ever lived in Grafton Ridge. No record of the high school he claimed to go to. No record of the baseball team he said he played for. What we did find was a PDF listing Grafton Ridge as a rentable filming location managed by a company called Coulter & Associates Immersive Experience. I had to close my laptop. I couldn't breathe. Marin, which Livia said carefully to me, her voice tight. I think Beck rented the entire town. That's when I started really looking at everything he's ever shown me. The yearbooks, I pulled them off the shelf while Beck was at work. The pages were not printed on yearbook paper. They were laser printed on standard cardstock. The signatures inside looked suspiciously similar, like somebody had practiced different handwriting styles but had not quite nailed the variation. I found 3 different Jessicas whose signature had the same loop of the capital J. Oh yeah, the varsity jacket still smelled like new leather. When I checked the pockets, I found a retail tag tucked into the folder, purchased 6 months ago. The childhood drawings, the ones I'd always thought were so charming, used Crayola marker colors that didn't exist in the 90s. Livia confirmed it because she teaches elementary school. She knew. Every single memento was fake. I sat on our bedroom floor surrounded by fabricated evidence, and I just started crying so hard that I thought I could vomit. I did vomit, actually. Barely make it to the bathroom. When I came back, I noticed Beck's desk drawer was slightly ajar. I'd never given the thought of his things before. It felt like violation of trust, you know? Trust. The word almost made me laugh at this point. Trust, huh? Inside was a binder. The tab said Marin, preferences, triggers, and reactions. So I opened it. Detailed notes, dates and times, what made me laugh, what made me cry, what topics to avoid, what vulnerabilities to mirror. It was like reading a study of myself written by someone trying to reverse engineer intimacy. November the 3rd. Mention loving people with strong roots, critical. Emphasize feeling untethered. Build narrative around stability and origin. She needs to feel my past is heavier than hers. January the 3rd. Responded well to story about father's death, which was fictional. Cried. Held me for 20 minutes. Note to self. Deploy similar vulnerabilities when sensing distance. There was another binder behind it, Beck 3.4, refinement. I couldn't open it, my hands weren't even working. Beck came home early. I was still sitting there holding the binder, and when I heard his key in the lock, he walked into the bedroom and saw what I was holding. He didn't ask what I found, he just starts to beg.
I didn't lie, I curated. You like curated things. You told me you love vintage shops, you love people with history. You love it.
What's your real name? He froze, mouth opened, closed, opened again like a fish.
Beck.
What's your real name? He gave me a name I've never heard, then another, then he admitted he wasn't sure which one I wanted. I asked him about his father, the man whose death had made me fall in love with Beck's vulnerability.
He's alive. Or he was. I haven't spoken to him in 7 years. I don't know how to be a person without a script, babe.
I couldn't speak. I couldn't move. He dropped to his knees in front of me, grabbing my hands.
Tell me who I should be. Just give me an outline. I'll become it. I'll become anything you need.
That's when I understood. Beck wasn't lying to manipulate me. Beck was lying because he didn't know how to exist without performing. So I text Adrian. I don't know why. Maybe I need confirmation from someone else inside the delusion. How long have you known Beck?
Long enough to care, not long enough to matter.
Even his texts sound like dialogue. I asked him if he was hired. He says yes, but he likes the role, and I think I liked him, or the version of him he wanted me to help build. Does that make it worse? I didn't even respond. Beck has sent me 47 messages since I left 2 days ago. They're all begging me for a chance to, quote, rewrite the relationship from scratch. He says he'll create a new version of himself, something more raw, more authentic. He doesn't understand that I don't want a new version. I want to know who I actually loved, and I'm terrified the answer is no one. Update number 2. I found out how deep this goes, and I do not think I'm okay. Hey guys, I haven't slept properly in about 3 weeks. Elowen keeps telling me I need to eat, but food tastes like cardboard. Everything just tastes like nothing. I need to finish this. I need to write it all down before I convince myself I imagined it. After my last update, Livia and I kept digging. We found Coulter's company website under long-term experimental services. There was a case study. Obviously it was anonymous, but we know it was Beck. So we contacted Coulter. He agreed to meet me at a coffee shop downtown. He looked uncomfortable the entire time, like he regretted coming. He's older, 60-something, with the kind of face that suggests that he's seen too many strangers to be surprised by anything anymore.
I shouldn't be talking to you, but you deserve to know.
Beck had been a client for 6 years, long before he met me. The project was called Origin Construction. Beck commissioned Coulter to create a fully realized childhood identity, complete with photos, locations, actors hired on retainer to play roles at random intervals. Some actors were on call for years.
How much did it cost? More than most people's mortgages.
Beck had sent Coulter my social media profiles, my blog posting, my interviews from college, my old MySpace page. He studied me for months before we randomly met at the gallery opening. We didn't randomly meet, he engineered it. Every shared hobby we bonded over was chosen. Every vulnerability he showed me was fabricated, and every coincidence that made me think we were soulmates was planted.
He requested things clients don't normally request.
He wanted the actors to improvise emotional depth. He wanted the childhood bedroom to smell like a real childhood. We had to spray specific nostalgic scents, and he demanded last-minute script changes when you asked unexpected questions. The woman behind the curtain, Miss Kolowski, was originally hired to play his estranged mother. Beck scrapped the storyline the day before I arrived because he decided it would make him seem too damaged.
She wasn't judging you, Coulter said. She was scared of him. He's intense, obsessive.
Most clients do this once as a lark. Beck's been refining his character for years, though. Coulter refused to answer when I asked if Beck had commissioned other scenarios, but his silence was my answer. I went back to the apartment while Beck was away. I needed to find the rest. In his computer, buried in folders within folders, were documents labeled Beck 1.0, Beck 2.0, Beck 3.0. Each version had an entirely different personality profile, different traumas, different strengths, different flaws. See, Beck 1.0 was an artist with a tragic past. Then he was a teacher with a savior complex. And of course, the next one was the version I knew, grounded, rooted, stable. Each version was designed for a different type of woman. There was a folder titled Possible Childhood Trauma Options, trauma he could deploy depending on what emotional response he needed. The monologue he told me on our 3rd anniversary, the story about his father teaching him to fish before the cancer took him. The moment I fell completely in love, it was copied word for word from a screenplay he downloaded. I found the PDF. The margins had his notes, practice crying here, 2 tears left eye.
I vomited again. This time I made it to the bathroom sink.
I found footage of him practicing stories in the mirror, adjusting his micro-expressions, testing different tones. It was like watching someone sculpt a person from clay. When Beck came home and found me there, he didn't even seem surprised. He just started to cry, but even his crying felt rehearsed. Tell me, who you want me to be? Just give me the outline. What's your favorite song? I asked, your real favorite song, and he's froze. His mouth opened, but nothing came out. There was no real Beck to answer. And that's when I understood I wasn't leaving a man. I was leaving a character who had no off switch. Guys, it's been 4 months now. I'm still at Elowin's. I cannot go back to that apartment. I can't look at those mementos knowing they're props. Beck sent me a final document last month. It was titled Revision. Inside was a single line, "Tell me who you want me to be." I didn't respond. I tried dating apps for about a week before I deleted it. Every time someone told me a personal story, I started just cataloging inconsistencies. I don't trust the narrative anymore. Not theirs, hell, not even mine. So, Jessa pointed out that I speak in half sentences now, like I'm afraid everything I say might be to build another persona. Nash, one of the friends from Grafton Ridge, reached out anonymously a few weeks ago. He confessed that he wasn't an actor. Beck had convinced him years ago to play along with the persona, and he said Beck had cut off his real family, destroyed his own past, but Nash didn't know why. I think that he's trying to remember who he was, but I don't think there's anything left to remember. Well. I have nightmares now, and in them I'm walking through Grafton Ridge, but all these actors have my face. They're all performing versions of me. Last week I got a handwritten letter with no return address. I'm trying to remember the original me. If I find him, I'll let you know. I don't know if I want him to find that person, and I don't know if that person ever existed. People keep asking me if I need closure, and Livia said, "You need to close the door on this one, all right." Well, this is not a story with an ending. It's just a story that stops. Mid-story, I guess you could say. At this point, I don't really know what to say. I still have not blocked Beck's number. I haven't responded either. His last message came 3 days ago. I think I found my real name. It doesn't feel like me, though. I read it 5 times. Not exactly because I'm considering going back, but because I realized something. I'm not the only one who lost someone. Beck lost himself along the line before I ever even met him. And I don't know which grief is heavier. Mourning a person who never existed, or mourning a person who erased himself so completely they cannot remember who they were. I wake up sometimes and reach for him before I remember. Oh, yeah, what I'm reaching for was never there. I don't really need advice. I don't really have advice. I don't have a moral. I don't have a resolution. I just have this empty space where a relationship used to be. And I don't know what you're supposed to do with that. I don't know if I'm the a-hole here for lying to him in the car when I said everything was perfect. But I also don't know if there was anyone real enough to lie to. So that's it. That's my story. It doesn't end. It just stops. Did I not tell you guys that this story was strange? 2 comments, as usual. Let's jump into it. Comment number 1, disagreeing with OP, says, honestly, I'm going to get downvoted to oblivion, but hey, I think you're being incredibly cruel and close-minded about someone who clearly has severe psychological issues and needs help. Not abandonment. This man obviously is suffering some kind of trauma, identity crisis, dissociative disorder, and instead of getting him the professional help you broadcasted his mental breakdown on the internet for validation, you admit that he never physically hurt you, never cheated, never abused you. He just desperately wanted to be someone you could love. And yes, he went above it in an unconventional way, but the core of it was love. Do you have any idea how much pain someone has to be in to erase themselves completely and rebuild someone from scratch just to feel worthy and wanted of another person's affection? You said yourself he didn't lie or manipulate. He lied because he didn't know how to exist without a script, which, honestly, it's sad. It's literally a mental health crisis, and you abandoned him at his most vulnerable. Everyone acting like he's some criminal mastermind, but he's clearly just a deeply broken person who loved you so much he destroyed himself trying to become worthy of you. The fact that you're more concerned with whether you were lied to rather than why he felt he needed to become someone else entirely shows a massive lack of empathy. You could have gotten him into intensive therapy. You could have worked through this together, but instead, you ran and then publicly humiliated him online. He sent you a letter saying he's trying to find himself and you didn't even respond? This is the man you loved. That's genuinely heartless. I hope he finds peace one day and someone who actually sees his pain instead of just their own wounded ego. Guys, let me know your thoughts on that comment. Comment number 2, which, by the way, does agree with OP, says this. OP, please don't listen to the people defending this man. What he did was psychological warfare. It was weird. It was described as romance, and anyone minimizing that is dangerous. This was not a man with health issues. I mean, don't get me wrong, he probably had those too. But come on. Trying his best, this was calculated. Year-long deception where he studied you like a lab specimen. He didn't just lie about his job or his age. He fabricated an entire reality, hired actors for years, rented a town, created props, practiced crying in mirrors, and documented your emotional responses like you were an experiment. Super strange, if you ask me. That's not love, that's obsession, control, and a level of manipulation so profound it should genuinely frighten everybody reading this. The people saying, oh, he just wanted to be loved, are completely missing the point. He never gave you the choice to love him, the real him, because he erased whoever that was and replaced it with a manufactured person, a persona, based on market research of your vulnerabilities. This is psychological weirdo, okay? I'm telling you, this is just strange. You didn't fall in love with a person. You fell in love with a custom-designed algorithm wearing a human face. The trauma you're experiencing, not trusting anyone's stories, speaking in half sentences, analyzing every detail is a direct result of having your reality dismantled by someone you trusted 100%. Anyone saying you should have helped him is ignoring that you can't help someone who won't even tell you their real name. He says he doesn't even remember it. Who has multiple versions of themselves filed away, who seems human connection as a script to be perfected. You're not responsible for fixing that. Oh no, someone who spent 6 years and a fortune building a prison of lies around you for what? Your grief is valid. Your fear is valid. I think you should reinstall those dating apps and give it a second chance because, trust me, no one you match with on there is going to be as weird as this guy. And your decision to leave was the only sane response to discovering the person you loved never actually existed. Guys, I have to agree, that was a super strange story. Halfway through it, I was like, this guy lost his mind. He hired a whole town of actors. What? Anyways, let me know your thoughts about it. What you would do if you found yourself in this position. Drop it down below in our comment section, guys. If you enjoyed today's stories, let me know about it. Hit that subscribe button. I'll see you guys tomorrow. And of course, remember one crucial thing. It's cool to be kind. Peace.